Hello, all, and welcome to our first workshop for the Designer CEO Club. And we are working on your client welcome flow. So, in case you're not familiar with what we do in the workshops, we take little bits of the process and we put that in a question daily in prompts in our daily prompt area in the forum. And then we gather all of that together. So each of these prompts is very intentional because within the month, there will be a workshop that is related to the content that you have hopefully created from those prompts. So each of these is supposed to kind of provoke some thought over that month so that you're not trying to gather it all at one time. And so it's a less overwhelming experience. And then we bring it all together in this workshop at the end of the month. So let me introduce you initially to the client welcome flow. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Brittany. I'm the CEO and lead consultant for My Design Assistant, or MDA as we're also known. And we are a virtual assistant agency that supports interior designers. And also I do consulting, assisting designers in building, strategizing their business. I've been working with designers since 2017. And it's been incredibly exciting. So we're about a team of 10 at the moment and growing. I am a mom to two wild little ones, 3 and 6. And then my husband, Tyler, who you'll see in the CEO Club, he's our community manager. We live in Central Oregon, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. No one really hears about our town. We live in a small town of Crooked River Ranch. And so you literally have to get off the highway and drive away from everything to get to us. Fun fact is I will happily choose Starbucks iced caramel macchiato over food any day. Always coffee first. If I have to choose which one I'm going to have time for, I'm absolutely going for the coffee. Sad truth. So as I mentioned, today the topic is the client welcome flow. Why should this matter to you? The welcome flow is how you introduce yourself to your clients, as well as introducing your service to your clients. And where this becomes incredibly important is it's setting the tone for your projects. So a lot of the work that we do for the consulting is we are helping designers with their client interactions. And a lot of times when we start to have those negative interactions, there can be a lot of reasons for that. One is, maybe there's something completely external that has nothing to do with your guys' interaction or your project, but now it's come to a head and you're just the one there. But a lot of times it's because they don't understand the process like you do, or sometimes it might be that the designer doesn't really understand how they feel about the process in that way. Where we see that is maybe markup or how they're going to charge for their time on site for an installation, things like that. So when there's a lack of clarity on your side, there's even more of a lack of clarity on the client side, and they start to develop their own expectations. And when the client expectations and the designer expectations don't meet, then we start to experience that tension. So another part of this, why this should really matter to you, is you can highlight the parts of your process that you feel strongly about. And that's communication guidelines, work hours, turnaround times. I'm in the forums, I'm in the Facebook groups, and I'm always seeing designers who are saying the client doesn't respect my time, the client is messaging me at all hours of the night. We set those guidelines. And if we don't give the individual another place to put that message, or if at any point we're telling them with our actions that we are going to answer them on the weekend, they're going to take advantage of those avenues because either directly or indirectly, we've told them that it's okay. So if you absolutely don't want to receive messages on weekends, one, I'm a huge advocate. If you can avoid giving your phone number or have a app for your work number in those occasions that you need to text, I advocate for that fully because people can't help themselves. And it's not that they want to interrupt you on the weekend or that they, don't want you to spend time with their family. It's just they can't help themselves. They have a thought, they want to get it out. So part of this is making sure if those are the things that are important to you, if that's what's keeping you up at night, if that's what's stressing you out, and you look at your ideal business and the world that you're working in, and you see it a certain way, and that's not how it's existing for you currently, this welcome flow and being able to establish things is what's going to make that happen. And I interact with my clients very often. I mean, as a virtual assistant, it can feel a little distant for sure. So we give our clients an alternative way to communicate with us, because for me, when I receive a text message on the weekend, I hate that. And it's just because that is my time. That's my me time. And I really don't want to feel pulled away from family or pulled away from my rest in order to work, unless it's something that I'm choosing to do. And also, this is going to enable you to quickly define and identify a right fit client. So again, a lot of times in those situations, maybe there were signs that that client wasn't a right fit. It's not that they're a bad person. It's not anything like that. It's just maybe you want to work a certain way and they need their designer to work a different way. And so by identifying the way you want to work, you're going to be able to more readily and easily identify those clients that are going to be a good fit for you. And another part of this process is we're trying to eliminate that pressure that when someone comes to you and they're not a good fit, but you're already talking to them and you feel obligated to take on their project, we're trying to take that part out of the picture. And I'll explain that in a little more detail later in this process. But ideally, we're trying to support you in the life that you want to live, in the business that you want to run, and find a way that your client can feel supported, can feel knowledgeable and educated about your process, but then also to make sure that you're setting clear boundaries and you are equally supported in that. So how will this workshop help you? I've already kind of covered that, but the flow will help you present more professionally. So when you're coming to someone and you're saying, hey, this is how we operate, these are our limitations, or, this is our expectation for us working together, even though sometimes that might be more limiting and it might not be ideally what they want to hear, knowing those limitations and knowing that you have those ironed out is actually really encouraging to a lot of clients, because it's like, okay, this person knows what they're doing and they know their boundaries, they know where the lines are, and they can help me with my project. And so while a lot of people might be scared off by setting hard boundaries, obviously we don't want to be rigid, but it can actually be really encouraging to clients to see you take that ownership. This will enable you to bypass taking on clients that drain your business and energy. We've all had those clients that we had that gut feeling, maybe I shouldn't do it, maybe I shouldn't take them on. And then you do, and then you regret it the entire time, and you're exhausted and you're tired, and you just knew you weren't a right fit from the beginning. We're trying to avoid that. And we have extra steps in this flow to kind of, ideally lift them out of there. So this will help you to avoid uncomfortable conversations and client confusion later down the road. Again, setting those boundaries, setting those expectations, those uncomfortable conversations, let's call it out money, those should be had early on. And the reason I say that is we want to make sure that we're not waiting until someone's frustrated or that they've been like festering on something for a long time before we bring it up. We want to address it out the gate when they're excited to work with us, when they're on the high of the process, to make sure that they understand. And I always encourage people, like, have FAQs. Excuse me, I'm having trouble talking. Have FAQs, call these out, have them initial, make sure they understand, because it's so much better to have that uncomfortable conversation in the beginning and have them ask questions then than it is to have to defend yourself later and feel like maybe they're attacking you or that they've lost confidence in you along the way. This is going to help you have more control over your project load. So again, another one of these that we really try to emphasize is how much time do you really need? So if you've worked with my design assistant, you might notice that periodically, in fact, we're about to implement one now, we will take breaks where we will no longer onboard clients. And we do that for a number of reasons. That is either we need to refine our processes. We need to go back and make sure that we're fully understanding something, or that we're teasing out some issues with our SOPs and kind of clarifying things. Or it could be like right now, we're just a little overloaded and we're building our team. And we want to make sure that the new team members that come onto our team have the appropriate amount of time to learn our systems, learn about working with us before we add them to a project. So with this too, like having a good idea of when you want to bring on new clients, or when your projects are going to be wrapping up and you're going to be more freely available. If you know you're not going to be available for 3 more months and someone says, oh, I need this project right now, I would really like to get this done, you know you're going to stress yourself out. A lot of times you're going to take that project because you're already talking to them, and there's that idea like, oh my gosh, maybe another project isn't going to come. Most of the time they do. That's not an issue. But again, with this process, we're trying to eliminate those. So hopefully you don't have to confront that at all unless you want to. So story time. So many of you might know I actually started for a small firm here in Central Oregon my whole design career. Before that, I worked at a nonprofit supporting individuals with developmental disabilities. And after I had my son, I realized that I really wanted more freedom. I wanted to be home with him more. And I just knew that that job wasn't going to allow me quite that same amount of flexibility. So I had reached out to an interior designer here. Long story, it was a result of a college course I took that told me I should look into interior design or something creative. And so I reached out to an owner of a design firm here and asked her if I could help her with her social media or just anything to learn about her business and see if this was something I wanted to pursue. And luckily, she took me on as a design assistant with zero experience, but a lot of motivation to learn. And she gave me an incredibly flexible schedule. It was incredible. So anyway, one day we're driving to one of the job sites and we are trying to brainstorm about this client. So this client had gone into, I think it was a tile store, and spoke to one of the representatives who gave her pricing and told them exactly what her discounted pricing was. And the client was furious because they discovered that she was adding a markup. Very standard. However, the client doesn't know that. So this is an incredible surprise to him. He's already paying for design time. And at this point, he's demanding that he's no longer going to move forward with the project unless she gives him the discount. And as we were driving, she's stressed out about it. He was one of those, we didn't really want to take the project on anyway, but she did. And what we identified was, hey, when did you guys discuss this in your onboarding meeting that you would be adding any markup to product? She's like, no, this has never happened before. I was like, well, is it in your contract that you add markup to product and that you're entitled to do so? And she's like, you know what? No, again, this has never happened before. I've never had this issue. And it was at that point that she added it into her contract to make sure that any time going forward, that they could open the relationship with that conversation that, hey, I get a discount. I pass a part of that discount on to you, but I do mark up your product and this helps me cover this, this, and this. As far as like education and training and things like that or whatever, I always suggest, if you can assign something to a value that they can understand, like, yes, I get this discount. However, it helps us move forward in this way in this business, then people can kind of understand that a little more and relate to it a little more. With that, it just added to the importance. Like once we had the conversation with the individual, he did move forward with the project and he could understand what the reason was for that markup, why he wasn't entitled to this discount, and why he was still saving money with her. He was still frustrated, but he moved forward and it was fine. But the purpose of this story was, had we had that conversation in the beginning, one, if he wasn't okay with the markup, he could have left and then wouldn't have to work with him anyway and have that conversation. But two, he wouldn't have had that same shock. And I know this has happened a couple of times with designers that I've worked with where a client shopped them, or, same situation, the vendor accidentally let them know what the discounted rate was, anything like that. Those conversations are made so much easier when the client already knows, because then it reduces the shock. So instead of him feeling like he was taken advantage of and that, someone was trying to pull the wool over his eyes, instead, had he heard that number, he might have still questioned it. I think that's kind of natural, but it wouldn't have been a surprise to him anymore. And that's what we're trying to avoid with this flow. All right. So questions you need to answer for yourself. So as I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of this is developing clarity around your process and then clarity for you. And a lot of times we have the tendency that if something's not clear for us, that we try to avoid it and just kind of skirt around it and maybe hope that the client doesn't know or doesn't pick up on it. And we want to make sure, again, that you feel 100% confident in owning these questions for your business. So one, what are the hours that you're available to work? And I might even tweak that a little bit to go beyond available. What are the hours that you're wanting to work? And yes, you can choose those hours. So there was a time I always tell people, like, I at one point was working 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, very consistently, almost every single morning. And it got to a point where I just realized I couldn't do that anymore. It was taking too much of a toll on me. And so I set my hours and I started looking, I want to work from this time to this time every day. Okay, if that's the amount of time I'm working, that means I have this many hours and I'm going to need to budget about this much for emergencies. So I would always have like a spare hour if I could, that wasn't really dedicated to anything. And then it was like, okay, I have this many hours to work on projects or whatever it may be. And knowing that and being able to time block, I'm a huge, huge, huge advocate for time blocking, then actually helped me to see when I was overloading or overcommitting myself on a project, and being able to look at my calendar when I would commit myself, say, to a floor plan or a render, and I knew that was going to take me 3 to 4 hours, and I looked at my calendar and I didn't have a time block for 3 to 4 hours, then I could go back and say, hey, I'm really sorry. There's actually no time for me to do it this day, but I can get to it this day. And I could right then set the expectation for the designer or the client and know that I was also protecting my time for myself. And it's okay to do that. As business owners, a lot of times we feel like we have to make ourselves available, that that's our job to make ourselves available to our client. And it's not necessarily our job. Obviously, you have to be reasonable and you have to have reasonable hours. But what is your job is to set proper expectations and to identify whether or not you can realistically get something done in the time frame that you are saying, given the schedule that you've provided for yourself. What is the financial investment or minimum financial investment for a project that you want to take on? Again, this is a big one. If you come in knowing what your minimum investment requirement is and somebody's coming in under that, you already know there's going to be a problem. They've already said they can't commit that much money to you. So then you have to decide, am I going to be okay with this? Really? Or am I spending all this time on this low budget project and I'm going to have to let these other projects go, or I'm going to have to super overwhelm myself for this? That is a number you need to come up with. And if there's different numbers, if you want to have different types of packages, then you need to kind of establish, what does that look like for you? And next, what is your project timeline? When can you realistically begin a new project? And again, I know there's that feast or famine. And when am I going to get another project like this? But you really need to think, especially if you're looking to hire a team later on, am I overloading myself? And that was the biggest, I would say, beacon to me that I needed to change things, is when I started adding in a team and they started getting overwhelmed by all of the things that I would take on, because they couldn't possibly keep up with my timeline and keep their sanity. So I had gotten clients so used to me doing things within 24 hours or doing things immediately, because I would stay up so late and I would always do them, but they couldn't keep up with that. And that wasn't fair of me to expect that of them. And so we had to revisit our timelines. and make sure that we had things that were really realistic that could be done and could be done well within the timelines we were providing. And finally, what communication methods are acceptable to you? And as I mentioned, I don't do text message, but I do provide a chat service that we add all of our clients to. And then that way, if they have a question on the weekend or anything that they want to send to us, then they have that opportunity to do it there, knowing we're not going to answer it. We won't be there on the weekend, but we'll answer it as soon as we see it and we're available to do so. So I have this full question sent in email. So guys, if you're in the Designer CEO Club, I know we've invited some extra people in here, then in the file share area, we will have the full questions that we have put into the daily prompts. And let me pull that up here. So here are these questions. So again, some of these might not seem directly related to your welcome flow, but they are indirectly because it's going to help you create a flow that really makes sense for you. And so I'll just quickly go over these questions. These were sent out in the email as well. What does success mean to you? How will you know when you achieve it? So many times we adopt the practices of other designers because they're quote unquote successful. But what does that actually mean to you? What does it look like? How are you going to know when you get there? What is that going to look like? And are you doing the methods that you need to get there? How did you arrive at that definition? And what that really is trying to pull out is that something you defined, or is that something that somebody else has defined and you're following along with it? And I know for me, I have gone all sorts of different directions with that to identify that my idea of success looks really different than when I first started my business. And now it's much more closely aligned with what I actually think success is for me, versus before I was looking at other people as examples of what that might look like. So again, some of these are the same. How do you communicate your availability? How do you enforce it and protect your time off? What are your preferred methods of communication for your clients? Actually, that might have been a repeat. How can new potential clients reach out to you, which we're going to go into a little bit more. So please take the time to look at these and really sit with them for a moment and answer each of these questions for how you would like your process to be, what you would like your business to look like, or how you would like it to operate. And then that's going to translate into your welcome flow and help support that future goal and that future vision. Okay, so why are these important? Answering these questions, knowing these answers are going to help you to set your boundaries and do so properly, making sure that you're not feeling that same tug to override them. And you might at first. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to set boundaries for ourselves, but having the answers to these questions are going to help you realize how important it is to have those boundaries and those limitations set for yourself. And once you get in the practice of doing it, you're going to realize just how good that really does feel. Knowing the answers to these questions is going to help you move toward the life you want with focus. So often we have this, well, when this happens, I'm going to do this, or once I get there, then it will look different. And a lot of times that relates to, well, once I get more projects or once I have a team, I'll take more time off. No, schedule it now. Make these things a reality for you now, or something that you're working toward. Maybe you can't take a full week off, but you can take an extra long weekend or something of that nature that is propelling you toward this vision. If we're always saying, if this happens, then I'll do that, and we're not actually taking active steps toward that vision, it's going to take you either forever to get there, or it's going to take a really long time, and you're delaying it every time you give yourself that if this then statement. Knowing the answer to these questions helps you to have more power over the outcomes of your business. So again, helping propel you toward that future goal. Oops, we've got a duplicate. All right, so now we're going to look at that client welcome flow. So here we have our first touch, and this is something that's included in your emails and CEO Club members. This is going to be in the file share area. And as we know, we might get these referrals from multiple different locations. We could have a referral from a client. We could have somebody who found us over Google search, social media, or some other marketing platform. So all of these methods, you'll see, ideally, we're going to have linked back to a customer relationship management system. And what is really helpful with this is a lot of systems. So for example, we use Wix, but say Honeybook or Dubsado, Indema, all of those, you can share a link or you can have it embedded in your website. So you can ensure that every single one of these goes to the same system. So I always recommend for people, like these can be especially uncomfortable when you have a referral from a former client or a current client, to always refer them back to the system. And that allows you to keep things consistent. And then again, it also helps to remove that like personal element that sometimes might make you feel obligated to take on a project that won't quite work for you. So once we get them into the system, we have an automated email with an info packet and link to a questionnaire. So the info packet is different than a welcome packet, and there is some confusion. So the information packet is a little bit more diluted. It doesn't go so much into your processes and what the expectations are as deeply, but it's more of a, this is what it's like to work for or work with us. And you can see we have some information that we either use for the project fit, but these are also things that are helpful to have in your welcome packet. What type of projects do you take on? Or sorry, your information packet. What type of projects do you take on? What are your project budgets? What's your client type? That might be a little much for the info packet. Locations that you work in, design style, start date, like, you know, it might be hard to say we're starting in September, but maybe we onboard clients for start dates 3 months out, if that's where you're at this moment. How did they learn about you? That's something for the questionnaire. And then the timeline for their project. Again, that's for the questionnaire. But having those things that would determine whether or not they're a right fit in the information packet, so the client can review it, or the potential client can review it and determine for themselves whether or not they're going to be a right fit. The reason we have the questionnaire attached to that is if they do move forward and they feel like they are a right fit, then once you receive that questionnaire, it gives you the opportunity to determine whether or not that is in fact true. And I think in one of our posts in the forum, I had mentioned at one time, I was spending at least 10 hours a week on discovery calls or new inquiries. And a lot of times it was people just wanting to know about the business. They couldn't really wrap their head around the business. And it was so much time that I was spending on something that wasn't really going anywhere. And a lot of those clients didn't sign up because they weren't actually interested in signing up. They just wanted to know more. So by having the packet and having a questionnaire, I was able to eliminate having calls with a lot of the people that didn't have real intentions of working with us. And now, typically when we have a discovery call, they almost always become a client. They're almost always a good fit for us. So again, this initial review, you're going to look at that. We have this criteria on the side. Are they a good fit? Do they fit that criteria that you were looking for? And are they a client that's going to help you move your business in the direction that you want to go? If no, then we can send an email to decline. We do have a template for that also in the Designer CEO Club. So we can send them, hey, so sorry, it looks like because of this, we're not going to be a good fit for each other right now. However, I do have these other recommendations for clients in the area I think might work better, or designers in the area that might work better. If they are determined to be a good fit, then you can go ahead and send them an email, ideally templated, so you can save some time. thanking them for their interest, and then with a link to your discovery call. And again, we say do the link because that helps to avoid the, well, I'm not available until after 5. Can you do a call after 5? No, like they can make themselves available if they really want to work with you. So then if you send them this call link, it helps to avoid those more uncomfortable conversations. They can schedule when they can, in the calendar when they can find a time to fit in there. So then you would have the discovery call to see if you guys would like to move forward. If you do, then you can do the initial onboarding survey. We have here, depending on the system, you can set an automation to nudge to move forward. From the results of their survey, then you would develop a client proposal, recap everything that they've mentioned, and make revisions as needed after they've reviewed it to get client approval. So ideally, again, hopefully to avoid any uncomfortable conversations later. Make sure you understand what they want and you've recapped it for them. They've said, yes, this is what we want. This is what we want to do. And then from there, send contract for signature. And ideally, I don't have this on here, but I always recommend also sending your retainer request to get some of those funds up front. So why do we want to route all inquiries to one place? We kind of covered this a little bit in that beginning, but one, consistency. So as I mentioned before, we want to create systems for you as if you're going to hire, even if you have no intention of ever having a team and you want to do this all on your own, great, totally fine. Consistency is going to still help you make sure that there's not, that concern of, oh, what if they find out I did it this way for this person or I did it this way for that person. It helps you keep a streamlined process, knowing that you've covered all of these, checkpoints with your clients and making sure that you are just not running ragged. A lot of times when we're inconsistent with our processes, it gets a little stressful because it's hard to remember what we did for each client. It keeps your processes more streamlined. It's going to be a lot faster. It's going to help you avoid a lot of trouble later on. Easier team handoff. So as I mentioned, even if you don't want to manage a team, but say at some point you want to have a VA who helps your onboarding process or does your scheduling or manages your email and scheduling, whatever it may be, if you can hand off a portion of this, it's going to be absolutely critical that it's consistent and it's very defined. And that's what we're trying to achieve for you here. Clarify expectations, avoid customer frustration and uncomfortable conversations later. Again, part of this, like when you're reviewing that contract, should be going over those FAQs, those really big points for you, the critical things that are important to you for living the life you want and the business that you want. Those are the things that you need to cover, and having this consistency with this process and making sure that no matter who they know, how they found you, they all go through the same process is going to help to ensure that everyone gets exposure to those points. And avoid feeling pressure to take on client projects that aren't a good fit. So if you haven't had the discovery call with them yet and you haven't heard their urgency and their need for your services, it's a lot easier to say, you know what, I don't think this is going to be a good fit and this is why, versus once you've had that conversation, it's a lot harder to do that. All right, so wrapping us up, we're going to go over the value of this. So providing the information packet first allows you to highlight the elements of working with you that are most important to you and might have the biggest impact on the client. So information in this packet could be how you present the designs, when you need them to make decisions. On that note, as far as when you're sending a contract, we encourage, and actually we'll be doing this soon, to put a deadline on when someone needs to accept your contract. And reason being, happens so often, someone's going to drag their feet and someone else is going to come in and say, hey, we're ready to sign up. And then that person's going to come in and say, hey, we're ready to sign up. And now suddenly what was this free time that you were looking to fill, now you're overwhelmed. So provide that information packet. Make sure they have something to reference back to for how you work, and that way the expectations are clear. Providing the information, providing the information packet first will help to eliminate unnecessary discovery calls, and therefore it's going to save you lots and lots of time and frustration. So we provide a link to our information packet and our call link. So the reason we do links rather than a PDF is we have found if we have that information in multiple places, then whenever we make an update, say to our pricing or a policy or whatever it is, we have to go back and remember all the different locations that we had that PDF and update it. So now we do a Canva link, and that way every time we make an update, it automatically updates across all of our systems. So we don't have to worry if this person who submitted an inquiry over here is getting the 2020 version of the packet and this person over here is getting the 2022. They're all the same because they all have the same link. By having the questionnaire before providing a link to a call, this allows you to review the information fully before moving forward with the call and ensures that you have the information you need to determine if a call makes sense. So a lot of times, even when we pair the questionnaire with the call link, someone might schedule the call because they're super excited and have the best intentions to get back to the call link, or excuse me, the questionnaire, and they never do it. So what we're trying to do by withholding that call link is saying, here's your questionnaire, please submit it and we'll get back to you. And then you're able to fully review the information before there's any pressure to talk to the individual about their project. So we encourage sending the link to call for multiple reasons. It avoids unnecessary back and forth. Again, we are looking to save you time, especially if you're not looking to hire a team. There's no need for you to email back and forth about scheduling a call when you can plop a link in there and it's super easy. If you don't have a system like House has a call link, you can use Calendly. Dubsado and Honeybook both have it, but also if you're a Google user or a Gmail user, there's a system called Mixmax, and that's one that I use for call scheduling a lot of times, even though we have Honeybook, and that's integrated into your email. I tell you, it makes it so much easier. So again, it allows one, you to save a lot of time, and two, again, like I said, when you're setting those limitations in your schedule, it helps to avoid the times where you feel like you have to take calls when you're not really ready to do it. And again, like I actually took a call on the way to my grandpa's funeral in 2020. Again, that was like my break year, but because I didn't have these boundaries set and I felt like I had to keep going back and forth with this person to schedule a call with them. And I finally was just like, you know what? Okay, let's go. Like, I've got a 6-hour drive. I can do a call with you. But I don't want to feel like that. I'm sure you don't want to feel like that either. And we deserve those breaks. And this is a way that you can do that. After the discovery call, if it's determined that both parties are interested in working together, send the project questionnaire. So we did have that initial questionnaire. This is different. This should be more detailed, and this is what you're going to use to do that initial proposal. So really with these, a lot of times they're kind of fun to do in person or maybe over a Zoom. Somebody might get a little overwhelmed to do it on their own, but really this should be like a deep dive into their project. If you have a team, these are so incredibly helpful. As a VA, I can tell you, for our team members who are a lot more into the projects that we're working on, it's so helpful to have something like this where we can get a full read on the client, especially when in most cases we're never going to work with or actually see them in person. So again, creating the question or proposal from the questionnaire answers ensures that you can understand the client's needs and have them approve. And at this point, make sure to go over FAQs, which should be some of the main sticking points of working with you. So again, what hours are you working? When do they need to pay their invoices? That's huge. When will they pay their invoices? So that would be like we invoice I can understand how those would be confusing. So when do they need to pay them? You know, if you're expecting that they pay them immediately, or you're going to cease work after 30 days, something like that, that's important for them to know. Excuse me. And when will they pay their invoices? That's, we invoice, for example, MDA, we always invoice at the beginning of the month, usually the first week of the subsequent month. So end of June, we would then invoice that first week of July. If you have markup policies, then I think it's a really good time to address that here. And who will be handling the scheduling of the contractors? Who will be paying the contractors? If you're a designer who says, I am not a GC, I don't handle contractors, my opinion is then you shouldn't be handling the scheduling and you shouldn't be the one paying them. So I know sometimes people will pay and then they'll invoice their client. That creates confusion for the client, because then in a way, by paying them, you've accepted responsibility. So my personal preference, of course, you guys have to do what feels right to you. I feel like it's a really clean line. You stay out of it entirely and you say, okay, I come in, I make sure that the design is done efficiently and according to the design that I created. However, I will not be in charge of your contractors, and you do need to be on site when they're here. So after they've approved the proposal and confirmed that the scope of the project, and ideally the estimated cost you've provided seem right, send a contract with the retainer request. I fully advocate for retainer requests. And the reason being is so many times we've worked with a lot of designers and I get to see these unpaid invoices, and you get to this point in the project where there's all this product coming in and you've already worked so hard. Do you stop working on it now just because they haven't paid? And while that seems like, yes, you should, there's that, you know, again, that discomfort. So by having the retainer and the estimated cost and saying, this is what we believe this is going to cost you, you need to pay this much upfront, we'll be requesting this again at this point. It helps, one, because they're already paying it, you know, you can move forward with those costs. And two, you're not sitting there holding, you know, credit balances or anything and getting charged those extra interest rates. Ideally, if you feel comfortable, provide an expiration date on the contract and proposal. We covered this a little bit before. This helps to keep your pipeline from bottlenecking and ensure that you get timely responses. Whew. Okay, so we've reached the end. I hope this was loaded with information for you guys and that you're feeling more confident going into this flow. Remember, you do not need to spend a lot to streamline your systems. So in the Designer CEO Club, if you look back at those posts from the last month, like I said, we've posted almost daily. Then you'll see like there's a lot of references to Google Forms. So Google Forms is obviously free. You can embed them on their website. You can share them via links. And so a lot of these things can be done through forms, and just making sure that you've really identified what you're wanting to get out of this, as far as like what your goal is for your full business. And there's a lot of systems out there that we can use to kind of automate and streamline more simply rather than getting a whole new system. So I would encourage, reach out if you feel like you're totally lost in this process. We can do some sort of consultation to look at the systems that you have in place right now, or, you know, like if you're using House, we see a lot of overlap. So for example, we have one designer who's using House, Dubsado, and Basecamp, and all of those overlap in a pretty big way. And honestly, we could probably eliminate some of those. And really, it's just their comfort area or level. They would like to have those programs. But a lot of times, if you're trying to watch that bottom line, you really don't need to. And we can probably work with it in a way that can avoid that extra cost. Even if you are a solo and have no intention of hiring, again, creating systems as if you intend to hire will help you create more consistency and you make your handoff infinitely easier if you decide to do so later on. So often, a lot of the people that come to us to work with our assistants in the agency, have never intended on having a team and just plan to work on their own. And that handoff is so difficult because they had never created any sort of system or consistency because it had always just been them and they always just handled the business. So creating those systems will really help to make sure that if it comes to that point and you're wanting to hire, it will be so much easier to do so. So the questions were emailed out before, are also in the forum area for club members, and you can see the full post with explanation there. So I've referenced back to the forum several times. In there, we have like a full blog post for each of these prompts that are in this question area and explaining, a little more detail, what you're looking for, what kind of answers we're looking to have from those prompts. So the Designer CEO Club members, all examples templates, including this presentation, will be stored in the file share area. So any of this stuff that you want to look at in your own time, and I'll see if I can add the video in there. I'm really not sure, but we'll make sure that we have all of that in there for you to review at a later date if you want to do this on your own time. So everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this was truly beneficial. I can't wait to hear your feedback, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.